Oh my robots and Rust-Oleums, this is Internet Personality Vangelus, and this is perhaps a review in company memoriam. 3A doesn't really exist anymore, they've closed up shop. But I have a lot of fond memories of 3A, and a lot of those early fond memories come from the World War Robot portable line, and that's what this figure is from. This is an Iron Panda Dropcloth, and I have been trying to find this thing for years. He came out in like a 10-pack or something, and he's the only one I wanted out of the 10-pack, and like nobody ever split that 10-pack up. I found him at Cherry Bomb Toys in Victoria, BC, while I was over there doing some work stuff that was way boring and not about toys, and I want to talk about this goddamn hunted down killer robot, and just in case you're wondering, this review ain't for kids, because I said goddamn. That's a blaspheme and a PG swear pushed together, which is practically PG-13, and as long as you're under 13, YouTube thinks you're kids. That's how this goes. Sorry, it's nothing personal. Anyway, the Dropcloth. This is the 1/12 scale version. There's a 1/6 scale version. When it says portable, though, it's 1/12 scale. So he's about 6-ish inches tall, and he's the smallest World War robot that there is, who isn't the tiny, dinkly little square thing. This is the one that's the most human-like, the most comforting and humanoid, except for how gangly and freakish and weird he looks with his mono eye and his trash can head and his thin skeletal limbs that want to strangle the life out of you. This figure comes from what I would call, if I'm recalling correctly, and maybe I'm not, a midpoint area in the 3A World War robot career. The early times, the paint was so weathered you could physically feel it. This Dropcloth looks like the paint is so weathered you can physically feel it, but you can't. I mean, if I rub the shoulder, there's a bit of grit from all the paint, but there's no straight up gnarly texture where the rust is, like on, say, one of the old large Martins. However, the paint still looks very good. This is still some solid 3A World War robot paint look, where the rust is on the corners and the scuff is everywhere. Dead eyes open, tap 14, crunch, it's even on the soft goods. I don't know what any of those things really mean, but you know, if you want to go find out the story about World War Robot, then tell me what you found. He's covered in pouches. All those pouches open up. All those little buckle things open up. There's a lot of Velcro closures. It's got to massage sometimes to get to come back together. There's even these, whatever you call these things, mollies, I guess, or, you know, I'm an expert with the military stuff. You can open all that stuff up, and I'm not going to, because it's a hell of a lot of finicky and panic-inducing work that accomplishes very little other than showing you that some of the big pouches still have some white, foamy puff inside of them. Needless to say, you can tell the visual quality of this piece. This is a high-end little posable robot toy. Now, when I say posable, what does that mean? These little guys are articulated. There's ball joints everywhere. This is before some of the larger figures that I think had some real Renaissance tier articulation ideas, but for, you know, Dropcloth is still doing some stuff. Ball socket head, and given the little mono eye there and the, you know, general shape of the head, this ball socket emotes a lot for a thing that in some ways probably shouldn't be able to emote, and I appreciate that. There's also, if you peek under the skirt, where, by the way, there's paintwork and stuff, you can use a ball socket connection between the pelvis and the upper body to approximate some waist swivelage and a little bit of midsection hingeage as well in multiple directions. The only problem with this is it's incredibly hard to tell that it's doing anything when the cloth is down, unless you remember what it looked like beforehand. Ball socket joints are the name of the game in early World War Robot, and so there's just two spheres put together that then match up into dual sockets on the torso and the shoulder. This does mean that you can sort of reorient the base level of the shoulder before you start interacting with this upper shoulder ball. In theory, that's what happens. In practice, these balls are so enclosed that the range of motion is kind of minimal, unfortunately, so you can't even really get the shoulders to come out much. You ain't gonna do a T-pose with this guy. You can bicep swivel, however, and there's this big thing that looks like a hinge, is a hinge, and it goes past 90 degrees, and that's cool. There's also a little ball socket joint connecting to the hand. The hand has 4 screws on it, and if you want to adjust the tightness of that wrist ball socket joint, you're going to want to mess with the 2 screws closest to it. These are some fully posable hands. You may have seen World War Robot toys where they got slightly bigger hands and you can make more use of that. Part of the ballsiness of the portable scale Dropcloth was actually making these fingers posable, and I think it works for these 4 digits. There's even cuts so that they can come all the way in and fist up. The thumb's on a ball socket joint, it's got 2 hinges. That's a decent fist. The cuts here let you, like, flat the knuckle out. The only bummer about this is this thumb is a little diddly-bopper thing, and it is hell of loose at the very base. Really loose, and this one's actually even worse. Like, that's barely holding on to anything. And I don't know how to tighten that without opening the hand up, and I don't want to do that right now because this thing took me years to find. The upside is that the design of the ball sockets on the knuckles, you actually have some spread, and this is, I think, is slightly before spread in posable hands was even becoming an actual thing with the advent of Soul of Jigoku and Gaogaigar and some third-party companies, which I believe came after that, but don't quote me on that, it's late. The hips are just ball sockets, so they're good at kicking forward, and they're good at kicking backward. They're not very good at going outward, and that's a big limiter in posability when coupled with the lack of a thigh swivel. That is not a cut for a swivel. This is one solid piece. That's a legit bummer to this day. The knee, though, is not a legit bummer, because much like the elbow, it just bends the way it looks. It only goes 90 degrees, but I think it kind of works. And then the ankles have got their own ball socket connection with some hell of tilt. And one could say some of the articulation limitations could just be, hey, when this thing existed in quote-unquote real life in the fictional world it's from, I'm trying to adjust this molly, because you'll be doing this kind of tugging a lot unless you know, I think you can fold these up and get them back under the molly up here, but I'd need tweezers and patience, and I have maybe one of those. The limitations on the articulation, one could say, match the quote-unquote realism of this robot design. In practice, though, it just makes the Dropcloth a little bit of a wet blanket. When the Armstrongs are kind of beefy and their limitation comes with that beef, the large Martins doubly so, the Dropcloth ends up being the weak link of the portable scale World War robots for me. This is also because of the hand, and again, the larger robots have bigger fingers to hold those big guns. This guy, his little fingers, coupled with that kind of anemic thumb, means when he's holding his guns, which he can do, it's more like he's cradling them solidly. By the way, where'd those guns come from? Like I said, I just sort of shoved this shotgun in the back there, and then it's just so I can show off the more impressive actual holster for a pistol. And these guns have got lots of weathering, so much so that I would say it would be worth looking at them on both sides if I were to, say, flip them over in a B-roll shot. But holding the guns, it can be frustrating, especially if you don't know how it works, which is that you just need to have those 4-digit fingers grip as tight as possible and maybe put the gun in there after you've settled on a pose. For instance, the thing I almost forgot to show you is that this soft goods down here, there's a posable wire in the bottom on both sides, so you can get some constructed billow going on, and that's sort of cool. What else is cool is that my World War Robot portable shopping list is dwindling. At this point, I just need to find those Iron Panda brambles. There was a heavy bramble and a rocket launcher bramble, and I'm gonna find them someday. But while I'm on the lookout, and before this video timeline runs out, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and I hope that this video has been informative, especially to those of you who might be looking for one of these things, and perhaps trying to figure out if you even want the thing. Most importantly, for me, I guess, if you like these videos and you want to see more, let me know in the comments, click buttons that you need to, and if you want to do some direct support, we do coffee stuff, we do Patreon stuff, and by we, I mean myself. It's just that's the thing that we say on YouTube, is this pluralization thing to sound like we're companies. I need to start reading patron names, but first I should check and see if all my patrons actually want their names to be read. While I go do that and hunt for more Iron Pandas to fill out the collection, remember these sage words of advice. Rust looks good, but rust that you can caress, rust that you can feel, that doesn't just look good, it tastes good.